You asked and Polygon delivered. Let's check out the Polygon Siskiu T8. Thanks for tuning in to this quick tech check brought to you by Polygon Bikes and Bikes Online. As you can see, what I have here with me is the new Polygon Siskiu T8. Polygon Siskiu T series are 140mm travel trail bikes with 29-inch wheels. The T6, T7, and T8 share the same aluminum frame and prices start at $1,800. Polygons are a bike that you can easily recommend to somebody who is getting into the sport, who might kind of hesitate at a mountain bike with a several $1,000 price tag. It's also a bike that is built with quality components that new rider, as they progress and as they grow as a mountain biker, they're not gonna have to run out and immediately replace those components. However, that doesn't mean that we have always been 100% on board with the different component spec that Polygon has chosen for all of their bikes. And it's something that we have seen in the comments too. Spec choices like brakes, tire choice, and if you remember those really wide 35mm inner width entity wheels were all things that we weren't super stoked about on a lot of the Polygon bikes that we saw. Having a very affordable bike usually means that you're going to have to make some compromises. It's cool seeing a brand like Polygon listen to that feedback and listen to those comments and make some of those changes that people brought up. So Polygon is taking their kind of flagship Siskiu T series of bike, making them more modern, and doing so while keeping it all at the same price. This bike retails for just under $2,400 at $2,399. All right, so let's go hit the trail, get some laps in, and talk about just exactly what's changed on the new Polygon Siskiu T8. All right, so first up, let's talk about the geometry changes that we see on the new Polygon Siskiu T8. So they're not drastic. The previous versions of the Polygon Siskiu T series bikes, they were pretty good as far as geometry goes for a modern trail bike. So first off, we see a slightly slacker head tube angle at 64.5 degrees and a seat tube angle at 76 degrees. The reach grew just a touch from 480 to 485 millimeters, and the chainstays also grew 2 millimeters to 432 millimeters. Aside from those minor geometry adjustments, we see the overall frame design get a few tweaks from Polygon in response to the feedback that they were given. So we see an overall bit beefier of a chainstay, just to help with the stiffness of the bike and an overall improved ride feel. The bike also has a bit easier and improved internal cable routing, and probably the biggest upgrade that we see to the frame is the addition of the universal derailleur hanger. And we see that UDH across the T6, T7, and T8 lineup. Not only do you now have the ability to run things like SRAM transmission on this, but also any bike shop that you walk into, if you break the derailleur hanger on this, they're going to have a UDH in there. So it just makes repairs and replacement that much easier. Dropping in here, just very impressed with, oh, that's loose, how well this bike comes off the ground. The component choice is great as well. Woo! The frame definitely feels a bit stiffer. I'm liking the back end of it. Across the lineup of the Siskiu T series, we see some component changes. Probably one of the most noticeable things for me right off the bat is they got rid of those really big 35mm inner width entity rims, and they replaced them with these, they're still an in-house Polygon rim, but they are a more modern 30mm inner width trail rim that we would find on most bikes. They have also gone away from V tire company and wrapped them in some Maxxis dissectors. So Polygon decided to simplify things by just doing a complete Shimano drivetrain and brake spec on the new Siskiu T8. We have a Shimano SLX drivetrain and Shimano M4100 brakes. The brakes come with 180mm center lock rotors. And from the looks of it, I think we actually have metallic pads in there, which is also a nice touch. So now that we've talked about the updates on the Polygon Siskiu T8, let's look at the overall build of the 2026 model. 140mm Fox Rhythm up front and Fox DPS in the back. Jumping into the cockpit and the touch points that we see, Polygon has a lot of the touch points branded with their in-house name. Bars, stem, grip, saddle, all Polygon. We also see a X-Fusion Maniac dropper, 170 travel on this size large. So on more of a personal connection, the Polygon Siskiu T8 was a bike that I actually purchased when I was getting back into mountain biking 4 or 5 years ago, coming off of 15 years of really not being on a bike. And so it's kind of nostalgic jumping back on the same bike and, you know, also seeing those upgrades that Polygon has decided to make and were some of the things that I also wanted when I owned a Siskiu T8. And if I go back to that place where I was, would I be happy with this? And I think for less than 2,500 bucks, it is really difficult to find a bike that you can go and tackle a huge amount of trails and not really need to upgrade anything. Initial ride impressions, and again, this is really just that, initial ride impressions. This was my first ride and any of our first rides on the new Siskiu T8. First descending, we were not on the most wild chunky trail. This is definitely more of a flow trail, so keeping that in mind, but definitely the bike is easy to get off the ground. It pops off of things, very nice. It was not a chore to get into the air, and it felt like I could control it and put it where I wanted it to go very easy. I think that the spec choice is nice. I mean, Shimano M4100 brakes, they're nothing crazy, but they bite hard. And again, long term, we're gonna see how they do long descents, but for doing something like this, there was really no need to need something different. They slowed me down when I needed to slow them down. Lastly, I think that the frame felt like it had just the perfect amount of stiffness for a trail, a flow trail such as this. The back end felt nice and stiff, so hopefully that's what Polygon wanted when they beefed up the chainstays. It didn't feel too spongy, but also nothing was harsh. Nothing was, you know, like rattling me from, you know, frame to handlebars. Everything just felt pretty plush. So that's kind of initial riding impressions. Descending, climbing, very comfortable position climbing. I don't feel like I'm stretched way out. I feel like I'm sitting up nice and high. We'll have to get to some steeper stuff to see how it does there, because it does have those shorter chain stays, so hopefully it keeps good traction. And the only other thing that was maybe a bit of an issue was there was a bit of pedal bob. Again though, this is initial ride impression and I haven't really tried to tune the shock. So getting in there and making some adjustments on the rear end might take care of that pedal bob. Thank you for tuning in to this tech check on the Polygon Siskiu T8, and thanks to Polygon and Bikes Online for getting us this bike. As you may have been able to tell from my first ride impressions, I am excited about the upgrades that they made. What do you think? Are these the upgrades that you were looking for if you're a Siskiu T series owner, let us know down in the comments. We'll try to answer your questions in the long-term review. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you out on the trails.